Welcome to the AI Adoption Podcast. I'm your host, Professor Ashley Braganza, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Nikolay Burlutskiy to this particular episode. Nikolay works for Mars, and for this episode, he's here as an expert in AI. Nikolay, before we get started, could I ask you, please, to give listeners a little bit of background about yourself and a little bit about your experience in AI, please?
Hi, Ashley. Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm Nikolay Burlutskiy. My background is all in AI. After my first degree in computer science, I started working in South Korea, working for Samsung Electronics, developing robots, building intelligence for them to navigate houses and build the map of the house and then clean. So those robots were cleaning robots with the computer vision systems and an intelligent way of rebuilding the map of humans' houses. Then I did my PhD in AI, where I developed a deep learning model that could predict whether a tweet will be retweeted within 5 minutes or longer, or a question or question answer forum would be answered within a specific time. And it sparked my interest in AI for healthcare, actually, because that time there were like more and more tools, startups building digital support tools for pathologists, for example. So after that, I moved to Sweden and worked several years for a startup where we developed a decision support tool for pathologists, which actually from a scanned biopsy, a tiny piece of tissue which was scanned at high resolution, could predict whether that patient has cancer or not, and not just say where's the cancer or not, but also outline it, segment it out, and grade it. Eventually, that tool was deployed in many hospitals, and now it's a profitable business. And I would say these days there are many different companies that successfully building AI digital support tools. Since then, I moved to AstraZeneca. I'm sure many people are aware of that company, especially after pandemic. At AstraZeneca, I was director of machine learning and AI for more than 5 years, where I built AI tools and services, which focused mostly on supporting different drug development programs from preclinical to clinical, and working with different types of medical imaging and so on. And in December last year, I joined Mars. Mars is a large company. Many of you, of course, know Mars due to different chocolate products, but I would say Mars is 150,000 associates who work across the world. And there are two large businesses. One is more confectionery, food, and then pet care, which is also includes different products for animals like cats and dogs, food, as well as Mars has more than 1,400 different veterinary clinics. My role at Mars is Senior Manager of Generative AI Platforms, where I lead building enterprise GenAI platforms that more than 150,000 associates have potential to use, and we have several thousands already using the platform.
Nikolay, thank you so much for that introduction and for sharing with us your background. And clearly, you have a huge depth of expertise in the actual building of AI systems. Now, one of the big challenges that companies face when they want to adopt AI is around just thinking about the not just the cost of creating those platforms, but also the complexity involved in building an AI platform. Could I just ask you to reflect on how can a company that is thinking about adopting AI, how can they start to simplify the creation of these AI platforms? I'll come to cost in a moment, but let's just talk about how the platform itself could be simplified.
Yeah, definitely. And before jumping into more complexities, I would like to highlight why many companies these days build platforms.
Okay.
From my time at AstraZeneca is also a huge company with 80,000 associates that built many platforms and think about imaging platforms or, different platforms for AI and so on. Big companies, they tend to, let's say, develop different AI model systems, and eventually many big companies, they end up with several solutions. And GenAI solutions, especially, they're super expensive and, of course, a huge impact. But having, let's say, 5 or 6 platforms, it's many companies would benefit from having, let's say, one platform, right? Where different teams can host their solutions, build solutions, discover solutions, maybe potentially we don't even need to build a new one. Maybe it already exists. So this is one reason why enterprise platforms are important, but also, with the recent appearance of ChatGPT, by recent, I mean, it's 2.5 years already, yeah. But we're like more than like millions, billions of users on the platform, which led to establishment of different GenAI platforms within different companies, because companies, they would like to have more control of how associates use data, especially when it comes to sensitive, confidential data. And companies build GenAI platforms or any AI platforms that have security and safety guardrails in place, as well as controls on cost. Yes, so we want to make sure that we provide, of course, very good solutions for customers, internal associates, but at the same time, we control cost. GenAI solutions can be very expensive. And finally, yeah, we want to have observability, make sure that our models perform well. And, ideally would like to have all this control and flexibility also, because if you look on the market, yeah, there are many companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, yeah, Meta, many startups, they develop amazing models. Yeah, Mistral in Europe as well, I would like to mention. And what's happening, right? Companies, big companies, they want to benefit from all these models in a cost efficient, and not only cost efficient, but in performance way. And the field moves very fast. By very fast, I mean, like, let's say the model which potentially we used last month, it's already outdated. A new model appears, which is potentially more cost efficient, providing the same performance, or provides even better performance at the same cost. So the costs in this Gen AI, what I mentioned, is very expensive, but it drops faster than Moore's law.
So given that companies have these choices that they've got to make, how do they go about making these choices then? What kind of thought process or what framework might a company use to decide? You mentioned some of the major players in AI, Anthropic, OpenAI, Meta, Google. I mean, they all have their various AI offerings and platforms, and I mean, but how should a company go about, choosing or making a choice, or do they use all of them?
Yeah, actually, absolutely. As I mentioned, I spent a lot of my time building different models, AI models, Gen AI models. And when you build any model, yeah, you monitor the performance of that model. And performance, how you usually monitor the performance? You have some benchmark data set, and then you build a model, and then you run that model on some specific unseen data. And the more diverse that data, testing data, the more diverse, I would say, sources of the data, the more representative the performance would be, right? And how it started in research community, where many public data sets were established, and now, like, there are many these data sets available. So it means whatever model you have, whether it's public or private, you can run that model on that data set and get some performance metrics. So this is what usually used in industry. So when a new model from Anthropic or OpenAI appears, yeah, you can see these metrics, performance metrics. But again, if you think about it, this is just a snapshot of real world, right? And when we use that model for some specific use cases, specific to, like, your company, let's say it could be AstraZeneca, it could be Mars, it could be any company, right? You would like to see the performance for your specific use cases. So it means if you want to see how a specific new model, for example, performs, you need to have a specific in-house test set or some benchmarks, ideally, because it's more representative that this surrogate performance metrics in public space. But it's a good start. So this is one way, yeah. So companies should establish their benchmark, internal benchmark specific to their internal use cases. Of course, it's quite expensive and time consuming, and later I can tell you more about how to deal with it, for example, with synthetic data, because producing generating real data is very expensive. Of course, as I mentioned, cost metrics are important, especially when it's at scale, right? One thing is to run your model once, twice a month, and for some use cases it's enough, but sometimes you need to run this model millions of times, and cost can be associated with it. So you can have, for example, pay as you go. You pay per one, let's say, inference, one prediction per model, but you can also, if you need to run that model every day for continuously, then you can even build that model on your infrastructure, right? And potentially even utilize open source models, invest in building your own models, so fine tuning the existing models and have it on premises. So this is another option. Then, of course, security, it becomes more and more important, right? Because these days there are also frameworks established how you can evaluate the performance of your model in security metrics. For example, how robust is your model for prompt injection or some malicious, let's say, misuse as well. There are frameworks as well, so you can, and many of these frameworks are open source, or there are companies that can help you to run your models or any kind of model against these benchmarks, and then as a result you'll have metrics. Think about it like red, yellow, green for each vulnerability, and then you can decide what vulnerabilities you tolerate and what not. And back to, it depends on use case, right? If it's more like an assistant to write an email and there's always human in the loop, maybe you can tolerate some kind of discrepancies in performance. But if you want to have an autonomous AI agent which works in healthcare or finance, then you should be very careful, right? And make sure that you don't tolerate much risks.
I mean, you just mentioned AI agents, and clearly the introduction and now what seems to be a massive explosion of the use of AI agents or agentic AI. How should companies go about starting to put those agents in place? Again, how do they start to incorporate these agents into their day-to-day processes?
Yeah, it's a good question because like agents is very new. So some people say like if last year was the year of GenAI, this year is the year of agents. And for me, as a person who did a PhD in AI and did some multi-agent research and published a few papers 15 years ago, it's quite interesting how the let's say the circle of innovation, let's say how these agents are reviewed, definitions are changed, and I would say my latest view on agents, right, the latest kind of definition of agents would be, let's say, something which is based on large language models. And then it has some autonomy to some extent. So it's autonomous, maybe not fully, but there could be a human, but ideal agents is autonomous. That agent can reason as well. Which is in our question, how far these large language models can reason. Are they just mimicking, or they can reason and even conscious about, right? And then they can act. They can, of course, perceive the world, yes, so through some kind of sensors, or through kind of, text interface, speech-to-text interface with help of humans. And they can act on what they reasoned about, and they can plan as well. So for me, it's like sounds agents is this idealistic AI world where we are going to. And of course, like now we have many different types of frameworks, different types of tools available to build agents or even integrate these agents in already existing workflows.
Mm-hmm.
I would say my recommendation for companies would be careful because agents are very new, and especially be careful when it comes to security and safety. At the same time, yeah, it's good to start small with some use cases which are, I would say, low risk. understand how this agent fits into your enterprise architecture, how you can integrate it with all your processes. And once you're there, then you can go up and up in terms of scaling and also integrating and onboarding agents in more risky use cases. But of course, like, focusing on benefit, what it brings. And finally, which is extremely important, to upskill workforce, because everyone has their own understanding what agent can and can do, what is agent, what is not. So upskilling, getting on the same page of what these agents are capable of and how they must be treated, this is extremely important. And I think I see it as a journey. I think we're at the very beginning, and I'm sure it will go up and down, but hopefully at some point, yeah, we'll see the huge change what agents bring, especially automating different processes. And my wish would be that we will have more time to focus on creativity and focus on more kind of like what human are the best for, right? Innovation, creativity, problem solving, and outsourcing all routine and boring things to agents.
And these agents, and as you say, we need to upskill the workforce for sure. Are there specific skills that you have in mind when we talk about upskilling? Because clearly the government has a big agenda on giving vast numbers. I think the last I heard it was about 7.5 million people AI skills. But what specific skills do you have in mind?
Yeah, I don't think it's in terms of skills, problem solving, I think, is the most important skill, and understanding the limitation, I would say, of the agents, limitations that at the current stage, understanding whatever these agents do, there must be human in the loop. Decisions must be made for now by humans. Agents can support these decisions. And of course, there are agents that act fully autonomously, but I would say these use cases should be of low risk and well tested and validated. And back to skills, yeah, AI literacy, because now everyone has access to like ChatGPT like technology, right? Yeah, so understanding how it works and how one can use, what is it good for, what use cases are not, and learning more about the available tools is a good start.
Yeah, and now we also mentioned about this issue around bringing AI agents into workflows and keeping humans in the loop.
Mhm.
But talking to companies and just reading some of the articles that are being written, clearly what companies are seeing is the opportunity to potentially reduce the workforce, or to kind of redeploy people in different parts of the organization. Is that likely? How do you see that playing out? Will the introduction of agents into workflows mean a reduction in the workforce?
What I'm confident about that AI agents will change the way we work in terms of the actual numbers, because back to like it's nothing new, right? This industrial revolution, then all digital transformation, yeah, like internet. We've seen these cycles of let's say how it was changed, how we work, how we think, how we operate, right? And I see now it's like we're at the phase of acceleration, right? It means it changes quicker than before in terms of the way we work. And of course, like Gen AI, and agents, they create jobs. I don't have numbers how many jobs it has created, per industry, per country, from its inception, and how many it's going to create. Definitely will be some jobs that will be affected and even, become redundant, right? That can be replaced. But I don't see it's something we should be scared of, because it's nothing new. I think the most important that we adopt this technology and understand, right? And it doesn't mean that we have to use it. We just need to understand where it works and where it's not and use it. And my view on this also, potentially a person who understands how to work with AI will have leverage over a person who doesn't, right? On the new kind of, let's say, market. Yeah. So, but I don't think like will be, let's say, huge discrepancy in terms of how many jobs are created, how many jobs are lost, but we never know, right? For example, for Industrial Revolution, I read at some point some interesting article how many jobs were lost and how many jobs were created, and same for internet. And sometimes it's not equal, right? The balance can be both sides. So, and it changes all the time. You know, tomorrow will be something new like quantum computing, and it may change as well. But I think it's, from my perspective, as a person who, since my first job was in AI, it's super exciting times. And it's, for me, very exciting to see that now everyone is looking into AI. Everyone uses AI. It wasn't like this even like 10 or 15 years ago, when most of exciting AI was only in academia or only in just few companies.
And in some ways that this move to adopting AI is just I feel we're just at the starting point of really that explosion where companies are going to be adopting it. Given your vast experience, Nikolay, are you able to give us some examples, perhaps not necessarily associated with any one company, but some examples of some interesting use cases that you've worked on or that you're familiar with?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you a few examples from my experience in healthcare to experience at companies like Mars. And as I mentioned, Mars is a huge company on its own. It's like a world, so there are many use cases. But like where AI and GenAI helps. So for example, in healthcare, I mentioned briefly pathologists. Yeah, pathologists, let's say doctors that look into biopsies, and then they decide after evaluation of the biopsy was potentially or treatment should be there, right? Or recommend to doctors after they provide with their pathology diagnosis. And it requires to look into like tiny piece of tissue, and even if you scan it at a high resolution, it's like billion of pixels. And what AI is good at, looking at every single pixel, like looking at billion pixels and see, okay, this is a red pixel, this is a blue pixel, yeah? And then provide you with some kind of statistics or analytics based on some historical data. So what's happening in pathology, digital pathology? So first, yeah, all these slides, physical slides being digitized. So we are moving to digital pathology. And it's already, pathologists can look into, like, let's say, on the screen at digital slides and make diagnosis. It's already approved by FDA. Next, AI comes, right? You have all these large images with feedback or diagnosis from clinical reports. You can train a model that, given a new image of scanned biopsy, it can write a report automatically, which doesn't mean it will be correct, but it will save a lot of time to pathologists. Pathologists, instead of writing from scratch, reports from scratch, can have that pre-generated template and just adjust it, and it could save a lot of time. And by saving a lot of time means that pathologists can accelerate also, decrease the waiting time, yeah? And decreased waiting time leads to saved human lives. So it's already happening, and that's one of the most exciting what I've seen in pathology space in healthcare. And there's a lot of investment going on, so I'm really looking forward when will be more digital tools for pathologists to accelerate their workflow and save lives. For drug development as well. In drug development, more and more data is available in digital way, and you can, let's say, train models that can predict safety properties of different drugs. So imagine you come up with a new drug and you can already predict, say, whether the drug will be safe or not, whether it will be have some benefit for a patient or not. And then you can prioritize all these candidates. And then once you prioritize the candidates, you can increase the chances of the drug to succeed. So this is what's happening in healthcare at a tremendous pace. And at companies like retail, Mars, or other companies more kind of in fast-moving consumer goods, think about it. Every corporation has a lot of processes, and these processes involve a lot of documents.
Yeah.
And think about it like these documents usually are like in some SharePoint folders or folders on some servers. With AI, back to these OpenAI models, large language models, you can connect such data to them. You don't even need to retrain or train models or fine-tune these models because it's extremely expensive and requires a lot of resources. You can connect your data from your database, from your SharePoint, and then use that data for knowledge extraction. So it means like, imagine you work for a company and then you want to get an answer. Instead of opening documents and then collating the summary and response, you can ask large language model that can do it for you. And then again, it will save you a lot of time, and that model even point you to the documents. So human in the loop is important, so you can check all these documents. But eventually, instead of spending hours, potentially days, to searching in the documents, collating like your response or your summary, your review, you can do it with a large language model. So this is one example, and it's or like think about like change of tone of voice. What large language models are very good. Imagine you have some text and you want to reformat it. You want to summarize it, have only 2 bullet points, and you want to change it like to some kind of legal language, right? Or more kind of specific to a company policies, right? Every company has a lot of policies, for example, or to guidelines for a specific brand. You can do it with large language models, and they're very good on that. And it's just a few use cases, and I would say they are not only about boosting productivity of people, but also generating revenues and saving time. For example, think about you have a factory running, and if something breaks, business might lose millions of dollars. And if you have a system in place that can, let's say, identify what was broken and what could be a solution based on a large knowledge base, right? And historical data. This is where computers are good at analyzing huge data sets and then providing you like kind of summary. It can save you a lot of, let's say, downtime of your factory. So this is just a few use cases that I see like already being in production.
Nikolay, thank you so much for those use cases. Earlier in the discussion, you talked about the use of synthetic data. And that's another topic which I think is, again, you can begin to see the rise of the use of synthetic data. Can you just reflect on some of the pros and cons of using synthetic data?
Yeah, absolutely. And before talking about synthetic data, I would like to highlight this challenge for every company, every machine learning person, AI person. When you train models, you need data. You need a lot of data. You need high quality data. And on top of that, not just data, you need annotations by domain experts. And by annotation, I mean like saying, for example, this is cancer, this is not, or this is good document, this is bad document, this is successful, let's say, application for grant, this is not successful. So annotations. And sometimes you need annotations very detailed, like segmentations, for example. Imagine you have an image of a cat, and then you need annotations of the outline of the cat. So if you want to train a model to segment out cats, you need these annotations. This is very expensive, very time consuming, and there has been a lot of effort to work around how you can manage, let's say, building models that require less data, less annotations. One way to do it, yeah, you build these huge models based on large data sets, and then you fine tune them. And back to like OpenAI, right? These GPT models, hundreds of millions of dollars were spent on just training these models. I'm not talking about collecting the data, assembling team of top-notch AI scientists, AI engineers, how many iterations we went through. Potentially it could be even $1 billion. not every company can spend $1 billion on building models, right? So then you can take this model and have just a tiny your specific data set and fine tune that model, still potentially millions of dollars. Then you can use some more smart ways to, let's say, how you adjust these models, connect these models, which is already a lot of tools exist there. But back to synthetic data, one way you can generate synthetic data and then use that generated synthetic data to train your models. And something what I did at AstraZeneca, we built models based purely on synthetic data. And these models were even better than models which were trained on real data. And why? One observations. So first of all, whatever model you train on large data sets, especially, you will always have some poor data quality examples that potentially, I wouldn't say poison, but will decrease the quality of your model. Your model might become confused. Okay, I have these good examples, now I'm bad, now I need to kind of build some representation of the world based on these contradicting examples, yeah? And one thing you can invest a lot in quality control, have like a very solid quality control, which many companies are doing, but still. And on top of that, real world is very complicated. And imagine you have you want to build a model that predicts diseases. There are like thousands, if not millions, different diseases, right? And then usually you have like very long tail distribution of diseases, right? Think about COVID, how many people had COVID, and then like smaller. And then you want to have a model which predicts like different diseases based on symptoms, for example, yeah? And this is real world data, which if you build the model, it will struggle to learn all these diseases. One way how you can deal about it, you can generate synthetic data, and then with synthetic data generator, you can control the distribution of your data. It means you can generate, let's say, thousands of COVID cases, thousands of some rare disease cases, and build a model on top of that. And that model will equally learn about all these use cases. And this is what we did. And results were published recently. But I would say the main learning for us was that, yes, synthetic data is very useful. And second, synthetic data can be better than data sets that are used for training models.
Nikolay, let me first say thank you so much for joining me on the AI Adoption Podcast today. We seem to have covered a very wide range of topics, all the way from how companies and organizations can go about building cost-effective and smart AI systems, all the way through to understanding agentic AI, how agentic AI is now going to be the next wave. And it's really interesting that you've kind of raised almost a word of caution in terms of the use of agentic AI, all the way through to the use of synthetic data. So a very wide-ranging conversation indeed. I'd really like to, again, thank you for joining me on the AI Adoption Podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Ashley.